women having self-defense.
No,
training,
yeah,
right?
that's true.
Mrs. Toth, she immediately rang the police, who were at the scene of the assault within minutes. They found nothing, unfortunately. And then, it sounds at the start like I'm just railing through this story super, super quick, but trust me, the juicy bits get later on down.
Okay.
Later on down. Later on that exactly the same evening, 20-year-old Debbie Freem, who had just 12 days earlier given birth to her son Jake, went missing after she drove to her local store to pick up a bottle of milk while in the middle of preparing dinner.
Oh, no.
I'll show you a picture of Debbie here as well. She's another just very happy, lovely-looking lady, and there's her with Jake in her arms. You can see him holding there. 12 days earlier, so she's obviously just overjoyed and everything, isn't she, from giving birth to a newborn boy. 4 days later, Debbie's body was found by a farmer in one of his paddocks at nearby Carrum Downs. Debbie had been stabbed in the neck, the head, the chest and arms 24 times. She was also strangled.
Fuck.
It's really sad. Really, I mean, all these are sad, but it's that fact of being so happy that something so amazing has just happened in your life, and you've just got this newborn boy, and then you're literally in the midst of preparing a meal for you and your family to sit down at. You just go grab some milk, and this fucking asshole comes up and does this.
Yeah.
Just to add onto it as well,
looks so happy there.
She does look so happy. So I mean, hopefully, aside from the actual event itself, it sounds like she, the weeks and months leading up to it went some probably really good for her.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. That's no consolation, but I don't know. Just to note as well, she also hadn't been sexually assaulted. The attack of Mrs. Toth, the one which had gone wrong, the one who escaped, was just thought to be a purse snatching that had gone wrong, and was now considered to be was originally considered to be a purse snatching gone wrong, but was now considered to be the same work of the person who killed Elizabeth Stevens and Debbie. The police were sort of in a bit of a panic, to say the least, at this stage. They put out their message out there for everyone, and it caused a right old kerfuffle in Frankston. The women of the district would lock themselves indoors, and the streets were apparently noticeably deserted at night. So you can imagine it's kind of a bit like a ghost town, right?
Yeah.
Or it's just the women hid behind doors, right? I bet the men were having a wild time in the streets, right? Going crazy? No?
Maybe.
Okay. Real estate sales and rental inquiries apparently plummeted because of the fact of there was a murder around. Frankston became known as the place where a serial killer was lurking amongst its residents. So pretty much no one wanted to move into this fucking place because it's a serial killer there. I mean, it's perfect prime time for real estate, though. If you want to get your foot on that property ladder, now's the time. We could really do with one over the road.
No.
Not killing us, just so that the houses go cheaper. It's so difficult to be a first-time buyer nowadays. You really need a serial killer.
I'm just staying quiet about this one.
You're not advocating that behaviour? No, I'm clearly, obviously joking. I do not want a serial killer running around. The police were relentless in their investigations. Every lead, no matter how small, was followed up, and even the slightest clue as to the assailant's identity was looked into immediately. A help centre named Operation Reassurance was set up to advise local women what they should do if they were attacked by the Frankston serial killer, and how to prevent from being attacked in the first place. But it was all to no avail. On the afternoon of July 30th, 17-year-old Natalie Russell went missing while riding her bike home from the John Paul College in Frankston. 17 years old. Let's have a little look at Natalie. Let's get a little picture up of Natalie. She's super, super pretty.
Yeah.
Right? She's like super pretty. She could have gone on to do... She looks like the kind of girl who actually could have just gone on to do anything. Yeah, she looks really together. Yeah, she was riding a bike home from college. and her body was found in the bushes beside a bike track that ran between the Peninsula and the Long Island golf clubs. She had been stabbed repeatedly about the face and neck, and her throat had also been cut. It appeared that the savagery in Natalie's slaying was far worse than in the previous 2 victims. So things had... And we'll get to the details of these in a bit more horrible detail. Hers was a lot worse in terms of the violence than any of them. Like we said earlier, these things seem to escalate. Like, you go from a little animal, bigger animal, you start killing people, and then the way that you kill just seems to get fucked up and more fucked up. Also, to add, it feels weird having to add that they haven't been sexually assaulted. Like, surely we should just be... it's weird. I just think it's weird that we assume that these women are going to get sexually assaulted because it fucking happens so often that we're going, of course they were sexually assaulted.
Yeah.
It's weird that is an assumption we make because of how often it happens.
I think it near enough happens all the time, to be fair.
With these particular cases, when you see like women who get attacked and shit like this, there's always some sort of usually. But this is why this one's a little bit different. A little bit different in this case. This time with Natalie, the killer had actually left a damaging piece of evidence that would prove their guilt should they ever be apprehended. It was a piece of the skin, which the police saw as possibly being from a finger. It was found on her neck, which it looked like it had been sort of ripped off or like sliced off, and just it landed on her neck, but all the dried blood had sort of stuck it onto the neck. So the police found this little piece of skin from they thought was a finger. Couldn't really ask for better evidence really than someone's actual piece of finger. The other good news, I guess, if there is good news with this, is that people locally had also seen a yellow Toyota Corona on a road nearby the bike track at 3 p.m. And this was the time around about where the coroner actually estimated that Natalie had been murdered. So people were coming forward, being very, very helpful, and giving all the details of things they may have seen. Observant police officers had written down its number from its registration label because the car had no plates. So even police officers who had drove by that night noticed, that's a bit weird, it's got no registration plates, so let's just make a note of its number, or whatever it is, registration label, just in case. So very vigilant. Back at the police station, detectives fed the registration number into the computer. It matched up with a report from a postman who had spotted a man slumped in a suspicious position as if to avoid being seen in the front seat of a yellow Toyota Corona. So apparently a postman had seen a man in this car sort of slumped down. You know, like when you watch like detectives in movies and sort of they slunch down, you just got little eyes peeping over the door.
The way I see is would just slide down the seat.
Oh, right. So he's actually in the bit where you'd put your feet?
Yeah.
Oh, no, he's not that far down. A quick check through the computer also revealed that the same car had been spotted in the vicinity where Debbie Freem's body had also been found. So where Debbie's body had been found, this car was also seen as well. So 3 sightings of the same vehicle around the same locations where 3 people had died. To the police, this was too much of a coincidence to be ignored. Any guesses on to who the car was registered to?
Paul Denya.
Paul Denya. Yes, Paul Denya. Paul, he wasn't at home when the detectives originally called at his address, so they left a card under his door asking him to contact them as soon as possible. Around 5:15, the detectives received a call from his Mrs. Sharon, and so as not to frighten Paul away, she was told that it was just sort of a routine inquiry, that they were interviewing everyone locally about this killer. Within 10 minutes of that conversation, a team of detectives headed by a guy called Mick Hughes, one called Rod Wilson, and a CIB detective, Darren O'Loughlin, converged at the block of flats at 186 Frankston.
What's the CIB?
Central Intelligence Bureau?
Oh, yeah.
So the detectives go around to Paul's house and Paul answers the door. Apparently he commented that he was surprised to see so many detectives for a routine inquiry. But he was very happy to let them in. He explained that while his car had no plates, he had a permit to drive it for 28 days while he made necessary repairs to have it registered. As Paul was sort of explaining his whereabouts at the time of the murders and going on why his car was there, a detective noticed that his hands were cut on several places. One cut in particular, so that the skin was quite... the cut was quite deep and the skin was missing from a certain area of it. The police obviously clocked that, put a little mental note and thought, that is highly suspicious. So, although Paul was admitting to be in the vicinity of the two murders at the same time, he was trying to make up an excuses. Now, I watched an interview with him, I watched the police interview with him. So, okay. Essentially what happens during these interviews is they're asking him these questions, and they're asking sort of, where were you? What happened to your finger? What's with the cut? And he says that he was changing something in his car, fixing like the fan or something, and he turned it on, and he's oh, by the way, he's quite soft-spoken as well. I'll try and do a good impersonation of him in a moment. Okay. But yeah, he's quite soft-spoken, and he's very confident in what he's saying. He's quite quick at coming back with these answers to what the police officers are asking him. And it's interesting because the police officers are talking to him, asking about this cut, and then they just stay silent for so long and look at him. And just his face, his eyes are darting around the room because he seems to be working very well when they're asking him the questions, but when they just stay silent, it's in his face. You can sort of see it, like he's so unsecure of like what's going on. Like his eyes are shooting everywhere. I'll probably put a link to that on the Facebook page actually as well. It just saves you guys having to search for it yourself. So the police were again. This was in the interviews as well, but it's sort of cut out at this particular point because I don't think they had this particular part. The detective actually walked out and sort of for all intents and purposes stopped the interview, and the guy who was, because obviously they always have two people in the room at the same time, one walked out, one stayed in. The other detective was very clever, and he sort of noticed that Paul had like a crucifix like around his neck. So he started to, talk to him about religion, if he was a religious man, a God-fearing man, and all this. And through this, he was using that sort of. He was being very clever, really. Yeah. And using that sort of psychology in his religion. And Paul eventually says, "Okay, I killed all three of them." Just flat out says it. Yeah.
What did he ask him?
Well, essentially what goes on is the detective leaves the room because he says, what we'll do is we've got this piece of evidence, we're going to run this through the machine, we're going to test it against the one that was, we'll test your DNA against the one that was found, just routine procedure. So he goes out to sort of do that, and while the other guy is talking to about religion, I'm thinking there's a combination there of the conversation about religion, maybe bringing up his maybe a bit of like Catholic guilt, if you've got anything like that. Maybe he's thinking, because the detective's going outside and he's pretty much knowing his jig's up anyway, he might just think, fuck it, I might as well just say it. I think it was the two things combined that got him to confess. But then, and what is really disturbing as well is that the police officer comes back in, the tape gets rolling again, and he then goes into very very intense descriptions of how he killed all three of these women.
Shit.
Yeah, and it's so matter of fact. But I'll get onto that now for you. So just before